Ben, thank you, sir, for taking a minute out for the show. I appreciate it.
Of course, Joe. It's great to meet you, and I'm excited to chop it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, social media expertise, I want to get into it, but before we do, I want to know one thing that I'm sure affected your world was surviving this pandemic. And I know
hmm
it's getting in the rearview mirror, but it did so many things and sent ripples. How are you still feeling the effects of going through that pandemic and living your life now and doing business?
It's so funny you asked that question because I think it was this week where I stopped to reflect that that even happened. Like, it seems it's crazy how quickly we just adapt and move forward, but definitely still feeling the ripples. There's some good and there's some bad. I'd say my business grew exponentially during COVID because everyone was so obsessed with going online, and I think that kind of fast forwarded the clock a few years in terms of everyone coming to wanting to be on social media and everything. So that was a positive. The con obviously was so many that everyone experienced. For me, it was like largely I tried to travel a lot for work, so that was not possible. Seeing family was difficult as well. And I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that just how it's impacted people's ability to want to do things in person. I think that's the biggest one that I've seen is that it's becoming so increasingly difficult to get people to commit to doing things because they were so used to just doing things virtually exclusively.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are missing out on that. And I'm one that loves in-person opportunities and connections. So that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, it is weird, but it's weird during that time period that even though we were technologically woven together, there's still aspects of us that like relish getting together. Sports, entertainment,
Yes.
those kinds of things. Like there's nothing better than exchanging that cellular energy in one room together.
It's we don't have the words to describe it adequately, but it is so powerful. So I would say that's very well said.
Mother Nature has a way of resetting and knowing what we need. And I think that was like the needed human being reset because we all got to
Mhm.
that Ralph Waldo Emerson point in the road where we're like, what are we doing? Who are we? Where are we going? It's almost like the rapture happened and we're all left behind. What are you guys going to do with the rest of your lives?
Yeah, it is does seem like we were hit with that existential question. So yeah, it definitely I think it caused a lot of people to think, and it kind of acted as like a fork in the road for which way are you going to go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were on autopilot for a very long time, and COVID kind of took that away as even being an option.
Yeah.
So I think it gave some people so much time, and then what you get from that depends on where you put it, which is really cool.
So as a social media marketing expert, I want to get to the actual marrow of what you do on a daily basis. So to do that,
Mhm.
I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, let's
Cool.
say third graders, and one of the kids in the back of the room, you come in and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
I love how you phrase that question because one of the biggest lessons that I learned in business was that if you can't clearly explain something, people don't know if they want you or how they can help you.
Yeah.
So that's a great way of framing that question. And I would say to that kid in what, third grade or fifth grade or whatever you said there, I would say that we help people grow their businesses by people finding them on social media. That's what I would say.
And the one thing I kind of want to ask as an offshoot, I've noticed in the last, say, 2 or 3 years now, everybody's using Instagram. It's like their portal, it's like their place. When did this sea change of Instagram? Have you noticed that too?
So Instagram, why it's becoming so popular from a business standpoint is because they really focused on developing features that allow you to create community, but also sell there. So I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to the fact that TikTok may be great for vanity. Like you can get a lot of numbers there, but it doesn't translate into anything. It's difficult to express how low value most traffic from TikTok is. They've created such a big platform there that's so good at keeping you there. So really the only thing that TikTok benefits is TikTok because you get these views and things, but they don't convert, and they're constantly coming up with more ways to keep traffic on the platform and take money out of your pocket, even though you're the creator. So I think that Instagram's seen that as kind of their opportunity to work with creators a little more.
Yeah.
And it's really ironic because I make a lot of content talking about this stuff, and people, the general sentiment is that Instagram sucks. But if they were really paying attention, Instagram's been doing more for them over the past 4 or 5 years than TikTok. But for whatever reason, people love TikTok
Yeah.
because they give them this dopamine of getting views that don't
Yeah.
turn into anything.
So how do you think this whole TikTok thing is going to transpire? So it's like the 16th it's supposed to go away, which it
hmm
won't. It's going to the Supreme Court. What's your take on this whole blockade thing?
I am hard pressed to believe that it will completely go away. I just think that it's such a massive driver of business growth. I would actually be all for it going away, truthfully, because I think the other platforms achieved basically the same purpose and are more we have more of the say as the creator or the business owner in both Instagram, even Facebook and YouTube. So I would be okay with it. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, there's going to have to be an 11th hour thing. I almost think because Trump's going to be in right around that time that
Mhm.
he's going to try to come in and be that one that saves it.
I completely agree. He's already planting those seeds now by saying that he's got a soft spot for TikTok because it helped him win the election. So yeah, he's probably foreshadowing what he's about to do. You probably called that.
Yeah, so let's go back to when you were in the third grade. What was
Okay.
your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Man, Joe, I was a weird kid. I had my whole life planned out from a very young age, and I used to have this sheet in my notepad of everything that I wanted to do step by step by step, and I would cross them off if I ever accomplished it. So that story was pretty solidified very young, and it was the plan was always to become an NFL football player. That was my life dream.
Okay.
Being a kid from Canada, I was a little naive to how difficult that would be. And
Yeah.
so I got to the highest level that I could, which was a Canadian college sports. And after a bunch of injuries, I was sitting on the table getting some work done, and the the trainer asked me, do you want to go pro in the CFL, the Canadian Football League?"
Yeah.
And that was always, I guess, the plan, the default, but I'd never even looked into how much they make. And so I was like, yeah, I think that's the plan. So then I thought to myself, well, what do they make? What does their life look like? And so I Googled it. And then I saw how much I would probably be making as like a special teams guy. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I need a new life plan." And so we definitely adjusted the course there. And so I just kind of went to the things that I wanted to do after football earlier. And so with the injuries and everything, I started my business while I was in college, about second or third year there. And then I just doubled down on that. And that's really what I've been doing ever since. I've been living in the content space, helping businesses grow, personal brands grow, and growing my own brands alongside of it. So yeah, that's it's gone according to plan to a degree, but not the exact path we thought.
Yeah. So take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements that made you love sports and gave you this vision of wanting to have a checklist? And you
Mhm.
knew very early on that this was going to be your life. What were those seeds planted in you?
Sports is something I push on literally everyone. If I already think about what I would put my kids in if I eventually have them in terms of what activities can develop into certain qualities and work ethic. I think for me the biggest thing is it changed my life because it was the first thing in my life as a kid that I saw that I had control over the outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most empowering thing ever when you realize that you can be bad at something and then consciously work to be good by doing the things someone that's good at this would do.
Yeah.
You it opens your mind up to you can apply that same foundation to literally everything.
Yeah.
And so I always say this to my body's been torn to shreds. My mom always asks me, "Do you regret playing sports?" And I always still say no, even 5 surgeries later and all these like this pain. I still am like no, because I probably wouldn't have those lessons to the depth that I do if not for that. So that's what I would say.
So who's been that hero? Who's been that bedrock for you in your life that's inspired you to do all of these things that you've done?
That's a tough question. I That's a really tough one. I'd say probably my sister and I have been very, very close for a very long time, and I think that she's one of the only ones who really believed in me all along the way. Because I was always the kid who would talk about, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and I would more often than not follow through on doing them. But every time when I was saying the stories, most people rolled their eyes over because that's just think how most people are. Whereas she would get excited with me and be like, oh, that's gonna be amazing when you do this, when you do that. So I think that that's probably a big one. And then also just seeing the people that I looked up to in terms of athletes, entrepreneurs from a young age, and just thinking about if there's an opportunity to be that for somebody else, then that's pretty worth getting up and working hard.
So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that might help you in your business or just overall, who would you love
Mhm.
to meet and spend time with?
Probably Tony Robbins, to be honest, because why I pick him is because I was very much anti woo woo, which is the word that I used to describe a lot of the things that he pushes for a very long time. And then I kind of realized once I went through a bunch of injuries and was forced to reflect and everything that it's only woo woo if you believe it's woo woo. And I think the power of the mind is something that's I'm internal like forever fascinated about. And I think that Tony applies that to people better than probably anyone. So I would just like to see because people always say a Tony Robbins conference or a Tony Robbins meeting him, it feels like this, but I'd love to feel that energetically myself. How about you?
Yeah.
Who would you want to meet?
I actually met my hero a year ago. My hero growing up was Dwight Gooden. I
Okay.
love Doc, and I was covering an event, and he came through, and I got to meet him, and I just it was cool, man. It was totally
That's
cool.
wicked.
But
That's awesome. And was it didn't disappoint you? It met
no,
expectations? That's
it was
awesome.
it was totally weird. So when I was a kid, my dad was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island. So I kind of adopted the Mets because they were in Long Island and Shea
Hmm.
Stadium. So I really got into the '86 Mets. But I collected baseball cards, so I loved Doc.
So
Like he
cool.
he was just the guy. So I had posters. I really, really emulated him, but I kind of detoxed off of baseball in '94 when the strike came around.
Hmm.
Reignited when I had my son, who's 20 now, and got back into it. So we watched a documentary about the '86 Mets, and it was like 2 years ago. So my wife got me a signed jersey of Doc, and there was a biography. So
So
that
cool.
later that year, he's coming to the Negro Leagues baseball. We have the Negro Leagues Museum here. He was
Hmm.
going to be inducted into something called Hall of Game, and I'm like, oh, I got to get press passes for that. So he's coming around. I walk in, my son's with me, and he walks in, and I hear Bob Kendrick, who has a very loud voice, coming in, and there's Doc, and I'm just like, just everything, all of the molecules of me were like, my whole life I looked up to this dude, and he comes in, doesn't know me from Adam, has no reason to do it, and he swivels around and he comes up, and I put out my hand and I said, "Hey, I'm Joe Dimino," and he was like, "Dwight Gooden," and I was just like, "Oh my God!" So he walked over, and the press starts coming in, and I immediately went up there and I asked him a couple questions and got to interview him. And it was just like, I came away, I was almost in tears. My son's on the spectrum, so I didn't want to get him hyped up. And I
Hmm.
said, he said, "Are you okay?" Because I was just a little misty. And I was like, "I just met my hero, man." And told him the whole story. And he looked up at me and he was like, "I think he's my hero now, too." And I was like, "All right."
That is that I got chills just thinking about that. That's such an amazing story. I'm
It
so
was
glad that
crazy.
happened.
It was totally crazy. So yeah, it was. But if I could meet one other person, it would be Barack Obama. I would love to meet him and have a
Interesting.
minute with him.
Wow,
So
I'm taken back by that story. That's absolutely awesome. That's so cool. I think a lot of people when they meet the person that they want to meet, it doesn't meet up to that,
yeah,
or they aren't ready for it. And so
right.
that's so amazing that it worked out in both ways. It's awesome.
Yeah, you have no idea how things are going to transpire. So it's
Hmm.
it's cool. So let me ask you this. What is the motivation for you every day to do this work? What gets you out of bed? What motivates you to be at the top of your game and to give the best that you can to your clients?
I'm obsessed with solving problems. I've always been that way from a little kid, is I love to understand why something works. I'll reverse engineer things in my mind constantly. And social media is basically just a way to do that at scale all the time. And with me working within my agency, so we work with a wide variety of clients, I'm able to tackle such a wide variety of problems. So it's like the anchor is the social media, but the intricacies and the things that interest me is the unique little nuance amongst all of it. Because I think that's really what separates mastery from general understanding, is being able to interpret enough to spot opportunities and also threats amongst a sea of data. Like that's how I really see it. And so
Yeah,
I'm constantly doing those things every single day for clients and thinking about what changes their lives, what changes their situation, and basically just giving them the resources to do that. So I'm just endlessly curious, and this allows me to apply that curiosity in something that I can actually see moving. It's a little more like a video game in this sense because
yeah,
I can see the things actually happening,
yeah.
and so that really satisfies me.
So let me ask you this. The one thing about Tony Robbins is no matter what he asks people to do, there's a level of risk to get to a better
Yes.
place, to do things different. So when you look at the arc of your career and your life, what's the biggest risk that you've ever taken?
You got some great questions, Joe.
Thank you.
I think that I saw this TED Talk, or it wasn't a TED Talk, it was on a podcast recently, and they had done a psychological study on people who achieved big things in their life, and they all had that all or nothing moment where they doubled down and they went for it. I think I've had a few in my life, but the first one where it was kind of, okay, I'm really going for this was in college when I had been running my agency. I'm like 20 to 30 grand in student debt at this time. And I'm using this one camera to basically function my entire agency, my podcast, my YouTube. It's like this $2,000 camera. And I don't have $2, let alone 2,000. And I bring it to this event to try to film content for it. And in the sea of people, someone knocked it out of my hand and broke it.
Wow.
And so now I'm faced with my only way to get money and continue to grow my brand and my own YouTube channel, all these things has now literally just been crashed in front of my face. I go look at my existing credit card, it maxed out. I can't even buy it with the credit card that I have. So I then go on to American Express. I lie about how much money I'm making to get another credit card. And then they approve me for this credit card, and I instantly went and bought the new camera, saying this is the moment where I figured out. This is the story I eventually tell on a podcast. And
Yeah.
luckily, I was able to pay that off fairly quickly. We got some more clients because of it, and it all worked out. But that was a very I don't think anyone would have said to do that at the time.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. So let me ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, ran into a much younger version of you before you really in earnest got into social media and helping clients, and you
Mhm.
could give that version of you a piece of advice based on what you've learned, what you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you impart on that younger version of you?
It'd be a really simple lesson, and it's one that I try to give to everyone I meet. It's that you already know the answer. Just look for the things that are convincing you that you don't have it.
Yeah. So I got to know as a sports fan, what is the most energetic, crazy game that you've ever attended? And if you could get into a time machine and go back and see one game, where are you
Mhm.
going?
So the one that I've been to in person is an easy answer. I'm a massive Jacksonville Jaguars fan, multi-year season ticket holder, unfortunately, seen a lot of pain, but was the playoff game 2 years ago against the Chargers when we came back from 27 nothing. No one really left because we were so hungry for a playoff game.
Uh-huh.
And my friend from Canada texted me because I was in the stadium. He said, "What's the atmosphere like? How are you feeling about this?" And I said with conviction, "As long as we score before halftime, I think we win this game." And he said, "Okay, bet." And he put down a bet, and he won a bunch of money because we came back. Yeah, so it was a
That's
really cool
awesome.
moment. I've never had a experience like that, and I think that anyone who doesn't get sports, if they were there, they'd instantly get it
Absolutely.
because it's just an infectious feeling. It's much like you said, like you're really feeling a transfer of energy.
Yeah.
So that would be an easy answer for which one that I would go back to. If I could see anyone, uh, that's a really tough question because I'm such a probably the national championship game that Michigan just won. That's probably one I would wish that I was at. I
Yeah.
tried to coordinate with that with a friend to go because I'm a big Michigan fan, been going there since I was a little kid. So probably would have been that because that was a long time coming. I didn't know if I'd see a national championship for Michigan in football. At an age where I could understand it, because when they
Yeah.
won it so long ago, I was like a tiny little kid. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, for sure. You know what's weird? I get into traditional sports. My favorite's baseball, but I love football. I love all of the sports. But the one sport that blew me away that totally I didn't expect it, I had a friend that gave me NASCAR tickets years ago.
I've heard
That
that.
was a trip, man. I mean,
Yeah.
the sound, the speed, the fury. Like I went down by the gate. It's something that I to right now to this day. It's like a feeling I can't explain. It's like when you love a music and you can't explain why it just washes over you that golden amber, but you
Yeah.
just feel it. It's like that was what that was, and
So cool.
it's wild. Yeah,
I had a boss for my first job at a school, and he was a big NASCAR guy, and he
yeah,
said the exact same things you're saying. He's like, you just got to go, you got to experience it. You'll
yeah,
only understand it once you do that.
yeah. Just do it once. So let me ask you this: of everything that you've accomplished and done in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I think I'm the most proud of the fact that I've been able to build a business where I help people who have money for money, and then I help people who don't have any money for free, and I can afford to do that. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, at this point in my life and my career, I basically have two price points. It's either very expensive or free. And I think that is how it should be because I think that sometimes the people that need it most are the ones that could never afford it. But I think it's putting that out there to allow it to come back to you and to allow it to spread in the ways that it can. So whenever I see an opportunity to help people, like we've helped so many people with consulting that were people we knew or that they couldn't afford us, and it made no financial sense. And the people who are involved in finances for the business are like, "Why are you working for free?" And I was like, "It all makes sense. It all comes back." And so I think that's my biggest thing for sure.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone you know, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am someone who is obsessed with learning to the point where uh, that foundation is what can allow me to be better every day. And so I think that someone who's obsessed with that is typically going to work out and is someone that you want in your corner. And so I think I'm somebody who provides a lot of value because I care.
What's your favorite social media platform?
YouTube to create on, probably Instagram to consume on.
Okay. Where do you think this is going to go? I mean, what kind of, like, let's say we talk 10 years from now and we're trying to
Mhm.
forecast what might happen for social media. Where do you think it's going to go?
There's so many ways I could go down to answer that question. From a very broad point of view, I think that AI is a very real thing,
Yeah.
but I do think we're going to have to create situations where we protect the connection that comes from a human, and that will probably have to be safeguarded through legislation, so like laws, and then also practices done within the platforms to safeguard from that, because it's going to very quickly become indistinguishable.
Yeah.
And so we have to make a decision. Are we okay with that? And then if we are, then what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think those are the biggest fundamental questions, because there's a short period of time right now where it's becoming easier by the day to be doing this stuff, but it'll eventually spill over where it's so easy that no one is technically doing it because it's all being done by machines.
Yeah.
Right. And so then at that point, what does any of this look like? And I've had very existential thoughts through this whole situation. And so I think that it'll go a lot of ways, and it'll go very, very fast. I think legislation is going to be the biggest driver of where this goes, and hopefully legislation can keep up with how fast the technology is moving, because from even in the content space, the impact that AI is having is crazy. And it's in a lot of areas where people thought that we were untouchable, like
Yeah.
in terms of creativity and video stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's the biggest one. And I think also, if you're listening to this and you're afraid of AI, you can't really stop it. And so I think your best served is to use it, right, as a tool. I
Yeah.
think changing your relationship with it is one of the best things that you can do for your current approach to it, is just thinking this is not taking my job. It's an amplification of me to do my job, right? It's
Yeah.
a tool in your tool belt. It's not the whole thing. And so I think it's going to allow people that are already productive to become wildly productive.
Yep.
And I think it may get to a place where it makes the people that don't want to be productive, they may not have to work. Like that's how crazy things will get. And I think social media is going to be a big driving force of that.
You're totally right. So, Ben, if anyone wants to hire you, reach out, have questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
Appreciate you. Yeah. So if you want to find me on Instagram, just at Ben Levitt underscore is the best way to message me personally. Or if you're more of an email person, feel free to reach out to me at ben at bunny, like bunny with the ears,
Yep.
bunnymedia.co. That is our agency's email. We help podcasters, software companies, and high ticket service providers grow primarily with YouTube and podcasting content. So and we also do general consulting for social strategy. So if you need something done, we can either do it for you or we can help you find someone who can.
Right on. Ben, this has been great, man. Great to meet you. Thank you, sir, for your time. It's been wonderful.
Of course, Joe. I appreciate you, man. Amazing energy that you bring to the show, and I hope everything's awesome with you and your family.
Yeah, have a great